Week 3 is officially in the books, and now we got to turn the page to week number 4. We have 16 games on the docket for week number 4, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down every single matchup and discussing whether I would start or sit the running backs in all of those games, as well as how I have them ranked for how they will finish by the end of the week. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below if you do end up enjoying. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 4 running back start or sit decisions for the 2025 fantasy football season. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals. Now, last week, without Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker lived inside of the end zone. 16 carries for 38 yards, which obviously isn't very good up against the Saints defense, but he made up for that with 2 touchdowns as well as 1 reception on 1 target for 12 yards. It is important to understand that his running back 10 finish in PPR was definitely minimized by the fact that they were beating up on the Saints so badly that they actually pulled the starters. Now, Zach Charbonnet was listed as a full participant on the team's estimated practice report on Monday, as the team did not hold a real practice since it is a short week. I assume if he does play, that would be in a more limited fashion compared to week 1 or 2, but that is just obviously a hunch. I don't know that for sure. At this point, the Cardinals allow the 9th most points to running backs on a per-game basis, so while I still do have concerns of the workload of Kenneth Walker game in and game out, based upon the fact that he has had back-to-back top 10 finishes, 1 game with Charbonnet and 1 game without, I got him as a low-end running back 1 to high-end running back 2 on the week, who you obviously want in your lineup. With Charbonnet entering into the week following an injury on a short week and following the fact that Kenneth Walker played incredibly well, again, I really do expect his workload to get peeled back a little bit. I still do believe that Charbonnet is a high value handcuff, as he has proven when Walker has been hurt that he could be a top 12 running back on a weekly basis, but with Walker healthy, he doesn't have enough standalone value to be started. Now, for Trey Benson, James Conner is out for the season with a right foot injury from last week's game up against the 49ers, which now elevates Benson into the running back 1 role on this offense. Trey Benson was a premier handcuff over the summer, so with him now getting the action for the rest of the season as the starter, he will slot in as a top 24 running back in a majority of matchups. This week will be no different. He is a top 24 back in an above average matchup up against the Seattle Seahawks. If you're watching this on Tuesday, when I release it before your waivers hit, I am willing to unload 80+% of my fab to acquire him if I am in need of a running back. So I do feel very, very strongly about Trey Benson going forward. This week, he is a low-end running back 2, and I do believe that brighter days will be ahead for him. For Amari DeMarcado, he will slot in as the RB2 behind Benson with James Conner hurt. Ultimately, though, I don't really see him having any standalone value inside of this offense, as I think a majority of the snaps and the touches will go the way of Trey Benson. Moving now to the early Sunday game. Get up in the morning. It's the cold like Minnesota Vikings versus the Pittsburgh Steelers in Dublin, Ireland. Shout out to Conor McGregor. Sunday, 9:30 a.m. EST. If you wake up for this game and you are on the West Coast, and if you are not a fan of the Minnesota Vikings or the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're getting up at 6:30 in the morning, you have a football addiction. I love football as much as the next guy. I'll be up watching this game, but this is definitely not one that is having me excited to wake up a little bit earlier. Jordan, the numbers, Mason, what do they mean, is a locked and loaded starter without Aaron Jones. Watching the Vikings versus the Bengals was like watching a video on the other tube. The Bengals were a stepsister trapped in a washing machine, and the Vikings were the stepbrother taking them to Pound Town. Mason went nuclear with 16 rushes for 116 yards and not 1 but 2 touchdowns in that game. The Steelers matchup is above average for running backs on a per game basis, so I'm feeling real nicey about Jordan Mason as a high-end running back too. Without Aaron Jones, Cam Akers should be the running back 2 on a weekly basis behind Mason. He did just join the team last week though and saw 12% of the snaps, so I do think that will continue to go up if Aaron Jones misses a significant amount of time, but as of right now, I can't even guarantee he gets more than 12%, so he is not startable. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, Jaylen Warren has been a top 20 running back in every single week of the season, and he saw his highest snap share on the season last week with 80%. Now, if I'm being 100% honest with you, I do not think that Jaylen Warren looks that good at all running the football so far this season. He's averaging just 3.1 yards per carry. Now, his floor is elevated by the amount of targets that he sees week in and week out. This is a below average matchup in an overseas matchup that tends to be a lower scoring game, at least in my opinion, a more boring game. So I don't think anyone should really be in love with Jaylen Warren at this point. But the facts are the facts. He saw so many snaps last week. He's been reliable. So he's always going to finish in that like running back 20 to 28 range. So I got him as a low end RB2 on the week. Kenneth Gainwell has seen his snaps rip away every single week since week 1. Week 1, 54%, week 2, 42%, and week number 3, just 26% of the snaps. Even so, Caleb Johnson didn't even touch the fucking field last week. Gainwell scored on 1 of his 5 touches, but ultimately, with his snaps dropping off at a rapid rate, there is no need to start him. Moving now to the 1 p.m. slate of games, the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders at the Atlanta Falcons Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Despite the Falcons getting their back blown out by the Panthers in Carolina last week, Bijan was still able to have a top 12 finish. With 13 carries for 72 yards and 5 receptions on 6 targets for 39 yards, I have my worries about Michael Penix and how this offense is going to look, in my opinion, going forward. Even though this is not the hardest matchup ever for the Falcons, the Commanders' defense allows the 29th most points to running backs, though, so that definitely is something to worry about, even though I don't think their defense as a whole is all that amazing. But it is also important to understand why they are ranked that way, and that is because he has faced the Giants, the Packers, and the Raiders. So they beat up on Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scatterboo, a rookie in his 3rd ever game with Ashton Genty, plus Jacobs, who, you know, I'll give Jacobs some respect. He did find the end zone. So ultimately, while the matchup does seem incredibly scary, and I'll give them the credit for stopping those guys, but ultimately, this is a better matchup than the statistics will show you. So some people are going to panic. Personally, I understand why, but he is still a top 12 running back for me every single week. Last week, I discussed how Tyler Algier may be one of the best handcuffs in fantasy football. His touches are very volatile week in and week out, so you can never actually start him, and last week was a perfect example of that. He had 17 touches up against the Vikings in week number 2, and then he had just 2 touches last week. Ultimately, I think the offense is better than what we saw on Sunday, but with Bijan healthy, you can't get cute and play Tyler Algier when there's no teams on bye. Like, unless you're really down bad with a bunch of injuries, there's no way I would feel even remotely okay putting Algier in my lineup. Now, as the season goes along, I do strongly believe that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who is a sit, will eventually get the stranglehold of this backfield, and he could become a must-start running back every single week. I believe he has the ability to do that. But, and there's a big but, shout out to Abella Danger, at this point in the season, there are far too many question marks with this backfield's workload in order to start any of them. JCM led the running back room in snaps last week with 40%. He played 40% of the snaps. Chris Rodriguez, C-Rod, played 38%, and Jeremy McNichols saw 26%. Still, though, even with the most snaps on paper, Chris Rodriguez had the most touches with 11, JCM saw 9, and McNichols had 4. This is a tough matchup for running backs based upon the season that we have seen play out thus far, so I would prefer to sit JCM. Now, some of you guys may be in a position where your back is up against the wall, your back is against the ropes, and you have to start him. And you know what? That's, you know, there's a lot worse options out there than JCM, but to me, this backfield just seems like too much of a clusterfuck for me to actually start him confidently. Now, if I'm not going to be starting JCM, who I expect to see most of the touches out of the backfield, I am not going to be starting either C-Rod or Jeremy McNichols. nickels. Next up, we move to the New Orleans Saints at the no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Before we break down this game and the rest of the games on the slate for week number 4, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you will get a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you will get an additional $50 in bonus funds. How the pick'em works is incredibly simple. You pick 2 players at least, and they're higher or they're lower. If both of those picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, they all have to hit, but the payout will be higher. Make sure you guys do check that out, promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, the New Orleans Saints got Hulk smashed by the Seattle Seahawks and mono man Sam Darnold last week. Like we discussed earlier when we talked about the Seahawks, things got so bad that they didn't even play the starters for the whole game. They lost that game 13-44. Alvin Kamara wasn't able to do much in that matchup, and he finished as the RB number 41, honoring his jersey number. The matchup up against the Bills is middle of the road for running back, so this should be a bounce back game for Kamara. With how dog shit this Saints offense is, though, Kamara probably won't be able to, by the end of the season, reach the same heights that he did last year as a higher end running back option. Now, based on where you drafted him, you can't be too mad about a mid-range running back 2 most weeks, which is exactly where I kind of think he is going to lie, in the mid-range running back 2 to the low-end RB1 range this week. I think he just honestly sees far too many touches for him to completely fall flat on his face like he did last week. Now, with the beyond terrible offense of the Saints, there is no world where you can even remotely consider playing the running back 2. Especially a guy like Kendre Miller, who you can't even pencil in as a locked and loaded 6+ touch guy on a weekly basis. For the Buffalo Bills, James Cook may end up being the player I was most wrong about this summer. I was the conductor of the James Cook Hype Express back in the summer of 2024. I was giving him the Gawk Gawk 9000 special, metaphorically, of course, but this year I hopped off the bandwagon. I thought there was no way, Jose, that a running back that should see 50% of the snaps or less most weeks, and by the end of the season, could possibly score that many touchdowns again. It's impossible. That can't happen. And guess what? It's not impossible at all. James Cook doesn't give a shit. The Honey Badger don't give a shit about my opinion. And the guy has been a top 8 running back every single game of the season. Last week, he played his season high of snaps with 67%. So if we end up seeing him play 60+% of the snaps every single week, then he could legitimately be the RB1 by the end of the season with how good the Buffalo Bills offense looks. And up against the Saints defense that just got bukake'd by the Seattle Seahawks, James Cook is a must-start top 8 running back here, and he is in the top 6 matchup here for running backs up against the Saints. Now, depending on the game script, the running back 2 in terms of touches on the Buffalo Bills will either be Ray Davis or Ty Johnson. Now, in a game script that is likely going to be belt to ass here by the Buffalo Bills up against the Saints, I would expect to see more Ray Davis, so I'll label him as the RB2 here. So if this one does get out of hand and maybe we see Kissin' Titties Mitchell Trubisky in as the quarterback 1, maybe Ray Davis scores, right? But with them peeling back their workload and giving more touches to James Cook, and with it just as easily being Ty Johnson in the end zone or Josh Allen instead, there is no need to get cute and play any other Bills running back. Next up, we got the Cleveland Browns at the Detroit Lions. Now, I don't know what is more shocking, the Cleveland Browns beating the Packers as 7.5-point underdogs, or Quinshon Judkins running all over the Packers' amazing run defense. Judkins looked amazing, like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. He had 18 carries for 94 yards and a tug, as well as 1 reception on 2 targets for 1 yard as a top 13 running back on the week. He has yet another tough task ahead here. The Lions defense has been great up against the run. They locked Derrick Henry up and threw away the key. So I am definitely not super optimistic here, right? I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, he looked so great last week up against the Packers. Let's fucking jump him out there as a top 16 running back, right? I think that's a little bit crazy to say. But based on how he has looked through his first 2 starts of the season, and with his snaps increasing to 55% last week, and I think he's just going to keep getting more and more of the workload, he deserves to be a low-end RB2 to high-end running back 3. Jerome Ford F150 and Dylan Sampson's value are currently chilling in the dumpster. Sampson played less than 10% of the snaps and Ford played 36%. On an offense that is as bad as the Browns, you can't justify playing the RB2 or the RB3 on that team, especially in a matchup like this. For the Detroit Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery formed an Eiffel Tower over the Ravens defense in Baltimore last week, smacked them up with a baguette. Jahmyr Gibbs was the running back 3, rushing 22 times for 67 yards and not 1 but 2 touchdowns, as well as 5 receptions on 6 targets for 32 yards as the RB number 3. Montgomery outscored him as the running back 2. That Sonic and Knuckles matchup was deadly for the Ravens defense. 12 carries for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 reception for 13 yards. Gibbs is still the RB1 clearly on the team, seeing 27 total touches compared to Montgomery's 13 last week. So there's no need to overreact to Gibbs getting outscored by Montgomery. I still really do believe that the game plan is to give more touches to Gibbs this season, not to do what they have done over the prior 2 years. So you're going to feel good about Gibbs every week. Now, I will put a little bit of a, pump the brakes slightly, because this is a very tough matchup up against the Cleveland Browns run defense. Ultimately, though, Jahmyr Gibbs is still one of the best running backs on the NFL. So if anyone was going to elbow drop the Browns defense, it would be Jahmyr Gibbs. So Gibbs is a top 10 running back for me on the week. Montgomery will live in that low-end RB2 to high-end running back 3 range for a majority of the season in my rankings. Assuming Gibbs is healthy, knock on wood, Monty is very much the side piece of this backfield. Now, he should see 11-plus touches weekly and has touchdown upside in any given game, so his ceiling is high due to the offense being so good and due to his ability inside of the red zone. But ultimately, with Gibbs being way above him on the totem pole, ranking him super high after one great game, especially up against a stout Browns defense, is a little bit crazy. So he's a high-end running back 3 for me. Moving now to the Battle of the Oilers, the Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. Now, Tony Pollard had his best game of the season last week up against the "This is our Colts, this is our team, we bleed blue," as he continues to dominate the snap share, 90+% of the snaps typically for him. And when you get a running back that gets that many of the snaps, you're thinking about how, wow, Owen Wilson, right? This guy feels like a locked and loaded must-start guy, but that has not been the case with Tony Pollard, who has fallen outside of the top 30 running backs in the first 2 games of the season. Last week, he finally found the end zone up against the Colts and had his best game of the season. What we have all been waiting for as the running back number 16. The Texans are top 12 in points allowed to the running back position on a per game basis, so we should be able to see a start-worthy performance out of Tony Pollard. But unless Cam Ward gets significantly better, Pollard's kind of just stuck in this RB3 limbo range weekly. And with Tajay Spears potentially returning coming up soon, it's kind of scary. The team also did just pass the play calling job to quarterback coach Bo Hardegree, so that could definitely change how the offense operates. And that also probably means Brian Callahan, his job is not very secure, like the ball when it's in Derrick Henry's hands, apparently. Julius Chestnut has just 4 total touches on the season and has seen sub 15% of the snaps in every single game. Say what you want about Pollard, but he is clearly the bell cow back on this team. Moving to the Houston Texans, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb will always be a favorite of mine, and I am still strongly in the camp that believes he is not washed. If the Texans were not a complete and utter shit show offensively, I think Chubb would be in consideration due to how great of a matchup this is for running backs. But with an offensive line that couldn't stop me from sacking CJ Stroud, I can't in good faith recommend you start Nick Chubb, especially with the rise of Woody Marks in this offense. So I would sit him. Last week, Woody Marks saw his highest snap share percentage with 48%, as well as seeing his most amount of touches on the year with 7. I still do believe that Chubb is the guy until further notice, so Marks is just a solid bench piece with upside if the Houston Texans can actually figure things out. Next up, we move to the Carolina Panthers at the New England Patriots. Now, even with the Panthers putting up a great showing up against the Falcons, belt to ass, and the Falcons not scoring a single point goose egg, Chuba failed to score 10 points. Weeks 1 and week 2, he's a top 10 back, so we can't panic after just one down game. Sure, the offense has a ton of question marks surrounding it. Sure, there are definitely issues here. There's definitely worries with the micro quarterback, Bryce Young. But with Chuba being so heavily utilized in this offense, and with a solid receiving floor weekly against a defense that's a mid-range matchup for running backs, you have to feel good about Chuba as a high-end running back too. You might just get hit with the Rico McMillie. Dowdle saw more work last week due to it being a blowout, seeing a season-high 40% of the snaps. Now, I do expect that to dip if it is a more competitive game here, which it should be. Rico did score a touchdown last week on one of his 11 touches, but last week felt to me more like an anomaly than the normal game script, especially here up against the Patriots, so I would not be comfortable starting him. With Gibson and Ramondre fumbling left and right, the door is wide open for Travion Henderson to see a bigger role in the Patriots offense. Now, we all know that Josh McDaniels is a certified dumbass. The guy is as stupid as it gets. He's trying to put the square peg into the circular hole. He cannot figure it out. He's an idiot, and we knew that when we drafted Travion Henderson, but my hope was that magically Josh McDaniels figured it out, and through the first 3 weeks, that has not been the case. But he did see his highest snap share last week with 46%, so let's hope that the Patriots figure things out and let him touch the ball more, because when they do, he is absolutely fireworks. Shout out to Katy Perry. He is explosive. He is a very fun running back to watch. So he sits just above. He just barely cracks the startable range as a RB3. Hopefully, he does well enough this week to where we can feel a lot more confident as him being a top 24 running back going forward. Last week, a bunch of people were all up in arms, all up in my grill, being like, Nick, how could you possibly rank Ramondre as a sit after he absolutely face-fucked the Dolphins defense? He shoved you into a locker and he gave you a noogie in week 2. He had 11 rushes for 54 yards and 5 receptions on 5 targets for 88 yards in that game. They were like, Nick, how can you not start him again? You know what I said? Because the Dolphins defense sucks dick. And they made Ramondre Stevenson look good. It's not because Ramondre Stevenson magically sipped a potion the night before the game. He rubbed one of those things and talked to a genie, and the genie granted him to become Bo Jackson. No. The motherfucker sucks. He has butter fingers. He has been fumbling for years. He had 3 for 18 carries, 3 receptions on 3 targets for 38 yards, and he had 2 fumbles lost. He's been fumbling for years, and people are still shocked when it happens. They're like that painting where the guy has his hands on his face, right? Or like in Home Alone, right? It's hilarious. How do you not see this coming? The guy plays like he dipped his hands in KY jelly before every single game. Never start Ramondre Stevenson or that bum Antonio Gibson, who also fumbled. Next up, we got the LA Superchargers at the New York Football Giants. With the injury of Najee Harris, the Omarion Hampton stocks are at an all-time high. Like if you bought Apple stock in the early 2000s, now I will never celebrate an injury, as Najee Harris has had terrible luck over the last few months, and I never like to see when any player goes down with an injury, and it does suck, obviously, for Najee Harris, because he may have been able to carve a solid role into this offense, but it would be foolish to ignore that Najee being out makes Hampton the clear RB1 and gives him a safe amount of touches every single week, because again, I genuinely think that if Najee kept getting more and more healthy, getting more and more integrated into this offense, this really could have been a disaster scenario for Omarion Hampton, but they didn't have him a lot in training camp because of what happened on the 4th of July. So Hampton is going to dominate the snaps and touches now in this backfield. Hassan Haskins will operate as the running back too, but I don't really see him taking away Hampton's workload like Najee could have. Hampton was a top 5 running back last week, hitting the Broncos defense with the stone cold stunner. 19 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown with 6 receptions on 7 targets for 59 yards up against the Giants defense that ranks top 5 in points allowed to running backs. Hampton is in the RB1 range this week. Hassan Haskins is very low down the totem pole of backup running backs in the National Football League. He averages 3.1 yards per carry across his NFL career since 2022. I would assume they either call up someone from the practice squad or bring someone else in at this point, because I really just don't think Haskins is all that good. Tyrone Tracy is expected to be sidelined 2 to 4 weeks due to his dislocated shoulder that he suffered on Sunday Night Football up against the Kansas City Chiefs, according to Adam Schefter, which elevates the scat man to be the RB1 and Singletary to become the running back number 2. Scatterbo ran wild last week with 10 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown, as well as 6 receptions on 8 targets for 61 yards. This is, though, a bad spot for Scatterbo. So even if he ends up seeing a similar workload to last week, the matchup isn't the best. I do think he's a talented player, and he is very, very fun to watch because this guy literally sleeps, eats, and breathes contact. He is just addicted to running through a motherfucker's face, smash mouth football. It's very exciting to run and to watch, but when push comes to shove, I don't like this matchup, so he's in the RB3 range. Devin Singletary isn't the best, but ultimately, if this does become a 50-50 split, which I don't think it will, he could just be very annoying if you have Scatterboo, but he wouldn't even be startable if that was the case because he's not good. All right, this is a quick cut in from Future Nick. I was editing this video and then it came out that Jackson Dart has been named the starting quarterback of the New York Football Giants. I do think that makes the Giants just more of an exciting team to watch overall. It's always exciting to watch a rookie quarterback. I honestly think he will be better than Russell Wilson. It doesn't really change my outlook on any of the running backs, though. Here in New York for the Giants, I still would be starting Cam Scatterboo. He is definitely still risky, and I don't really want any part in Devin Singletary, but now it might be a little bit more fun to watch the Giants not having to watch Mr. Unlimited anymore. Next up, we got the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. Fire the cannons. Saquon was locked up like Al Capone in Alcatraz last week by the Rams defense. 18 carries for 48 yards and 4 receptions on 5 targets for 9 yards as the RB30. Prior to that, he was the RB7 in week 1 up against the Cowboys in home. That doesn't make sense. At home in Philly, and then he was the RB13 against the Chiefs in Kansas City. This week is a middle range matchup for Saquon, so we'll just kind of erase last week from our memory. Forget about it. Saquon is a locked and loaded top 12 running back weekly. He's a top 5 running back for me this week, and if Saquon's your RB1, right, you didn't have to hear me say any of this. You were just going to fucking start him anyways. It doesn't matter who he goes up against. Dylan is the RB2 on this team, and over the last 2 games, that has been the case, but he really is the only guy to see a snap at running back over the last 2 weeks that wasn't Saquon Barkley, though he isn't even guaranteed to get a single touch, so I wouldn't even personally roster him. For Bucky Irving, even with the Buccaneers offensive line chilling in a hospital bed, Bucky still finished as a top 15 running back. The outlook as of right now isn't the best, as if your offensive line is that hurt, and the team is dealing with a bunch of injuries as well. Mike Evans is hurt. You kind of just have to worry about Bucky, right? Mike Evans could miss more than, it's at least a few games, so that could be 4+ games. I mean, he's older at this point. I'm not a doctor. I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny said, so I'm not going to say, he's going to be out 4+ weeks, but again, that definitely hurts the offense, especially with the offensive line is as bad as that. Ultimately, though, Bucky Irving is the clear RB1 in this offense with 70+% of the snaps every single week. He will be able to keep his head above water. It seems with all things going wrong, it's less likely now that he's that league-winning top 3, top 5 running back that I thought was in his repertoire. But he seems to be just so involved in the offense that even so, he should be a reliable low-end RB1 to high-end RB2 in a mid-range matchup this week that just saw Kyren Williams go ballistic against them. I got Bucky as a low-end RB1. Now, Rachaad White is just at this point a very touchdown-dependent bet at the running back position. With him seeing fewer than 30% of the snaps in 2 of 3 games, if he scores, you'll feel okay. If not, he's probably going to score you 2 to 5 fantasy points. At this point in the season, there's really no need to risk it for the biscuit here with Rachaad White, especially in a matchup that isn't extremely fruitful with an offensive line that isn't very good. Now we move to the 4 p.m. slate, Eastern Standard Time, the Indianapolis Colts at the Los Angeles Rams. This is our Colts. This is our team. We bleed blue. Shout out to Seth. Jonathan Taylor has been the running back number 1 in PPR in back-to-back games. back-to-back Michael Jordan, 96, 97, woo! And scored 29 plus points in both games. This dude looks amazing. And he is looking as good as a Big Mac when you come home from the bar at 3 a.m. DoorDash sends you that shit, and you just munch it down when you're drunk as hell. A Big Mac tastes amazing, and that's how it feels to have Jonathan Taylor. Indiana, Daniel Jones has this offense operating at maximum capacity. Jonathan Taylor is a no-brainer high-end start at this point of the season. Maybe Daniel Jones eventually gets exposed as the season goes along, but as of right now, you have to be sky high on Jonathan Taylor. Shout out to Will Stronghold. Even though this is the toughest matchup for running backs in fantasy football, DJ Giddens got 12 touches in week 1 due to the Colts smashing the Dolphins and JT being banged up in the third quarter. After that, he's received just 1 total touch. Unless you are a JT owner or want to have Taylor's handcuff, there's really no need to have him burn a hole on your bench. He has 0 standalone value. JT is a clear workhorse running back. Entering into last week's matchup up against the Eagles, tons of people were panicking hardcore on Kyren after Blake Corum found the end zone instead of Kyren in week 2. I told everyone to calm their titties, calm down. Everything's going to be okay. Kyren is still the lead running back. Do not panic. And while I get being quote-unquote vultured sucks, it isn't going to be something that happens all the time, and the keep calm approach worked as he dunked on the Eagles defense like his name was Aaron Gordon. 20 carries for 94 yards and not 1 but 2 catches for 18 yards and a touchdown. Kyren lives inside the end zone. We say this every week. So with a slightly below average matchup for running backs, we stay the course and rank Kyren as a high-end RB2. Maybe once in a blue moon, Corum will find the end zone like he did in week 2 up against the Titans, and you will be excited that you started him. But those games, to me, seem far and few in between. He will likely see 25% or less the snaps most weeks, so I will not get cute and fire him up here. Next up, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Duval at the San Francisco 49ers. ETN has scored less points each and every single week of the season compared to his last, and if that trend continues, he's going to be at 0 points soon. In all reality, though, I am not in any way concerned just yet. He isn't quite a lock to be a top 12 running back due to Trevor Lawrence being as reliable as a cell phone signal in the woods when you're trying to chase down some Russian. Shout out to Paulie Walnuts and Christopher Moltisanti. ETN deserves a high-end RB2 weekly ranking due to his standing inside of the offense. Matchup here is not great, so he's kind of flirting between the high-end RB2 range and the mid-range RB2 for me on the week. Baishal Tootin, I like what I've seen out of him over the last 2 weeks. He has scored a touchdown in both games, but his touches have fluctuated too much for me to actually label him as a start. Week 2 in Cincinnati was his best game, 15.4 PPR points. In that game, he saw 25% of the snaps and had 10 total touches. Last week, he had 17% of the snaps up against the Texans, and he was outsnapped by LaQuint Allen as well as ETN and had just 6 touches. I have confidence that this offense will get better as the weeks go on, and maybe Trevor Lawrence fucking figures it out. But as of right now, I just don't trust Tootin enough to start him. For Christian McCaffrey, regardless of who the quarterback ends up being in this game, you are firing him up with the utmost confidence. 3 straight games as a top 6 running back in PPR, and the man still hasn't scored a rushing touchdown. He has 31 targets through 3 games. That is an average of 10.33 targets per game. And this is a running back that we're talking about. On paper, the Jaguars matchup is tough for running backs, but put that in the context, they face Chuba, Chase Brown, and Nick Chubb. Christian McCaffrey is a whole different fucking breed compared to those guys. Top 5 running backs in my ranking every single week. Clear must start this week is no different. B-Rob played his lowest amount of snaps and touches this season last week up against the Cardinals in a very close nail-biter W. If this game is more of a blowout, we will see B-Rob more. Regardless, though, his touches just are not reliable at all, and he's not stealing McCaffrey's goal line work like a bunch of nimrods on the internet were saying this summer. Spoiler alert, I told you that wasn't going to happen, so B-Rob is irrelevant. Next up, we got the Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, prior to the season, if I told you, or if someone told you, right, by week 4, when the Ravens play the Chiefs, both of these teams will be 1-2. And they would just say, Nick, that's crazy. Or Hey, whatever your name is, John, for instance. That's crazy. That's not going to happen. That's crazy, right? But that's exactly where we're sitting. Meaning one of these teams will start off the year going 1-3. Derrick Henry has been an absolute disaster over the last 2 weeks after being the RB1 up against the Bills in week 1 and it feeling really good. It's like, whoa, look at that. Derrick Henry scores fucking close to 30 fantasy points. Now the man has fumbled 3 times on the season and has lost 2 of them. 1 fumble in each and every single game and a costly fumble up against the Lions on Monday Night Football. Now we will, sit with back-to-back games now outside the top 24 with one of the best running backs in the NFL. So sure, can we panic slightly because the offensive line looks bad? Yeah. Right? But you don't want to just abandon ship on Derrick Henry. You don't turn your back on Derrick Henry, especially with how great he looked just a couple of weeks ago in week 1 up against the Bills. I got Henry as a locked and loaded top 12 back. Do not overreact. Also, side note, when Henry slammed his helmet onto the bench and fell over on Monday Night Football, I genuinely don't think I've seen something that funny happen on the sideline since when Odell, do you guys remember when Odell fucking hit the kicking net and it smacked him in the face, and then a couple weeks later he proposed to it? That was funny, but honestly, this Derrick Henry thing was funnier, and you just know he is so fucking pissed. He's going to literally murder someone on the Kansas City Chiefs. He is going to run through their face. Metaphorically, of course, he's just going to hit them really hard and not actually kill them. Justice Hill will see his most amount of snaps and touches in games where they are chasing their opponent and are down in the game. This week up against the Chiefs, I think the game will be at minimum close. So, not really going to see much Justice Hill. Isaiah Pacheco looked good last week up against the Giants in MetLife, just like in week 1. So, the problem is, even if he looks good on his touches, they haven't truly handed him the keys to the backfield. And if he isn't scoring touchdowns, he's unstartable. 10 carries for 45 yards and a reception for 3 yards. Tons of people were mad at me last week. Nick, how can you label Pacheco as a sit? Oh my God, his matchup is so good. And I said, you know what? He doesn't get enough touches to start him. I'm not starting him. And guess what? He didn't play very well for fantasy. He looks good. He played good, right? If you're just like watching the game, you're like, wow, Pacheco looked pretty good in that game. But for fantasy, it wasn't good enough, right? It just isn't good enough. Maybe when the offense starts to gel and maybe they decide to hand the keys to Isaiah Pacheco later on in the season, then we'll be so excited. But as of right now, you can't even consider starting him. Kareem Hunt has seen less snaps than Pacheco in 3 straight games. Even so, last week they saw the exact same amount of touches and Hunt scored the touchdown. This situation is too much of a clusterfuck to start either guy. Next game here, we got the Chicago Bears at the Las Vegas Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. Now, DeAndre Swift is always going to be a good enough to start, but you're never actually excited that you played him. Even with the Bears beating up the Cowboys like what Michael Chandler did to Tony Ferguson, winning 31-14, Swift scored just 10 points in PPR. The Raiders defense is sneaky good up against the run, so this kind of feels like deja vu with another RB 20-28 performance. Playing DeAndre Swift is essentially like having sex with a model, but all the lights are turned off and you have 5 condoms on. Sure, you probably didn't feel anything, but you fucked the model at the end of the day, so you got a fine game out of DeAndre Swift, but what really is the joy? What is the joy in DeAndre Swift? He doesn't completely screw your team, but he doesn't really help you win. High-end running back 3. Hopefully, as a Kyle Monagai supporter, they flush Swift down the toilet swiftly, and we actually get to see Monagai because he has talent, but, that really just doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. Even with DeAndre Swift running like he has one of those old-school flat-screen TVs attached to each of his leg, he just doesn't get the ball enough to justify starting him. For Ashton Jeanty, back-to-back games with less than 10 fantasy points, and I am feeling about as down bad as it gets about Jeanty. The offensive line doesn't look great, and neither does Jeanty, averaging just 3.1 yards per carry. If Jeanty can't put up numbers against a top 5 matchup for running backs, in terms of fantasy points per game, we may have to have a serious conversation about Ashton Jeanty. Look, I get it's been just 3 games of his career, and I'm not going to panic and trade Jeanty for a half-eaten bag of Cool Ranch Doritos. But the deeper and deeper we get into the season with the production that Genty has been having, we have to start to worry. At this point, to me, in a wet dream matchup, he is now outside of the top 12 running backs because I don't trust him yet. He is a mid-range to high-end running back number 2. Zamir White is not good, which was very evident just after watching last season's debacle. He does feel like the handcuff to Genty, but frankly, even if something was to happen to Genty, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, I wouldn't feel good at all playing him, so there's no need to even roster him. Now we move to, cause you waited all day for Sunday night, the Green Bay Packers at the Dallas Cowboys. Josh Jacobs has honestly been very disappointing this season through the first 3 games, Packers at Cowboys. Ultimately, he has scored 12 plus points in every game and has yet to fall outside the top 24 at running back. So you aren't enraged that you drafted him. Like, you're not super pissed off that you drafted him. Like Tyler in, shit, what are they called? Dude Perfect. You ever seen those videos where I used to watch those all the time as a kid? Where he gets mad and he just like launch a grill or something. It was pretty funny. He was like the rage monster in the videos, I think is what it was called. I haven't watched one of those masterpieces in a while. Shout out to Dude Perfect. But like, you can't be that mad, right? But you can't be that happy either, right? Now, because you're not getting a good return on investment based on where you drafted him. Now, it is important to say that last season, things went pretty similarly. He's actually playing better this season to start off the year than last year. Things started off at snail's pace, but then from like week 5 on, he started to get better, and then week 7 on is when he really started to light things up. So all hope really is not lost. I get the Packers lost in horrifying fashion to the Cleveland Browns in a low-scoring game, but still Jacobs kept his head above water, and he saw his 9 targets, which is definitely far from the normal for him, as he had just 1 target prior to last week, so hopefully his involvement in the receiving game continues to trend up. The Cowboys aren't the best matchup for running backs, but they also aren't the worst. Feels like we get a low-end RB1 finish here to a high-end RB2. At this point, even with the slow start, though, he's still a must-start to me for Emmanuel Wilson. Chris Brooks and him are kind of the RB2, 2A, 2B. Chris Brooks' spot kind of got taken. His swagger got jacked by Emmanuel Wilson, but I don't feel strongly enough in that to really say confidently either of the guys are the RB2, and frankly, they don't even matter, so we're not even going to talk about them. Javonte continues to be a reliable fantasy asset weekly. Even with the team getting skull-fucked by the Bears in Chicago last week, he was still the RB20. Losing CD for at least the next few games hurts this offense and thus will hurt Javonte. If the offense can't move the ball as effectively, especially up against a strong defense like the Packers, Javonte could fall off the edge of the earth. The Packers allow the 26 most points to running backs on a weekly basis. Judkins did just play well up against them, though, last week, so there still is at least some hope, right, that Javonte doesn't smack into a wall here. With CD out and this being a tough matchup, he's kind of just in the low-end RB2 range, whereas normally more of a high-end RB2 to a low-end RB number 1. Miles Sanders will kind of just continue to pick up the scraps that fall off Javonte's plate in this offense. His snaps have upticked weekly, as have his touches. Ultimately, though, in a rough matchup with a tough outlook on the offense, even if he sees 10-plus touches here, I would not feel so good starting him, thus making him a sit. Next up, we got the first of 2 Monday Night Football games, because why have one shitty Monday Night Football games when you can have two shitty games? Jets at the Miami Dolphins, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be seated for this one as a Dolphins fan. I won't miss a single game of these sorry fuckers that ruin my year every single year, but I still pay for Sunday ticket. I'm still there, watching every game with my Dolphins gear on, got the Dolphins flag behind me. They play me like a fiddle every year. But we'll talk about the Jumbo Jets first. And that Aaron Glenn emote on the sideline where he was dancing, going crazy, was awesome. And it was even more sweet when they lost, because fuck the Jets, baby. So, and I'm not really that much of a Jets hater. The team that I hate the most is the Bills. I can't stand the Bills as a Dolphins fan, and Bills fans probably feel the same way about Dolphins fans. So as long as this game doesn't get too out of hand in the favor of the Dolphins, which at this point would just be crazy to even signify being the case, Breece Hall should be able to roll his windows down and cruise to a top 24 finish. The Dolphins' run defense is as bad as it gets. That is genuinely shocking. With all the players we have up front, you would think that they'd be able to stop the run, but I genuinely cannot remember a single time in my life in my whole entire life, I was born in 1999, where the Dolphins could stop the fucking run. They are a top 5 matchup for running back, so even with the fall off in production out of Breece Hall, from week 1 to the last 2 weeks, the matchup here should make up for it. Hopefully, Justin Fields plays because the offense operates a whole lot better with him under center. I got Breece Hall as a low-end running back, too. The Jets' offense will likely never be good enough on a consistent enough basis to actually start Braylon Allen. We saw him score in week number 1 with the Jets' offense was on top of the world. Since that ended up happening, right, Braylon Allen hasn't been very good with the Jets being bad, right? His value has kind of shrunk like your nutsack when you jump into a cold plunge. So no need to play him even in a wet dream spot. So in my opinion, Breece Hall is kind of a low-end RB2. Braylon Allen wouldn't even consider starting him. Now, say what you want about the Dolphins, and anything you have negative to say about my Dolphins, I have probably said. The AFC Cowboys blow more dick than a cheap hooker, and I am tired of watching this every single week. I will never quit cheering for the Dolphins, right? As they have been a large part of my life since I was a kid. But I am so tired of every single season being like this. We finally get close to potentially beating the Bills in Buffalo, and our defense our defensive captain, Zach Seiler, like a fat fucking sumo wrestler, can't stop his momentum and lays out the punter so the Bills can score on that drive. And then Tua goes fucking cross-eyed and threw a back-breaking pick. Come on, man. I'm so tired of this. And look, I just talk so badly about the Dolphins, but guess what? Guess what? Even though I was so close to jumping in the bath with a toaster after that game, even with all this dismay, even with all of this garbage that the Miami Dolphins spew out every single week on live television, A-Chain is still leading because that is what he does. When Tua is healthy, A-Chain has RB number 1 upside regardless of the matchup. 9 or more targets in 2 of 3 games and has scored 16 plus points in every single game. The Jets defense gets plowed by running backs, so I feel great. I feel incredible. Shout out to Frozone about Devon Achane as a top 12 running back. Ollie Gordon finally saw the usage that I have been waiting for all season and looked good doing so up against the Bills. He saw 25% of the snaps and had 9 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. As of right now, though, he is just in the solid handcuff range. But if the Dolphins actually figure things out and they can involve Ollie more, then he could have standalone value. Could. Again, not he will. He could. Final game here. Waited all day for 8:15 on Monday night. Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Denver Broncos. Chase Brown, you motherfucker. Now, I get a lot of people will rank Chase Brown in the start-worthy range, but I can't do it. I can't do it. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again. I've basically been fooled 3 straight times. 2 straight weeks, though, of straight disappointment, even with him being the guy. And then last week, he doesn't even see 70+% of the snaps up against the Vikings in Minnesota. The offense looks as limp dick as it gets without Burrow. The offensive line is a turnstile. I think Chase Brown and Jake Browning can turn things around and they could fix the ship, right the ship. But what we're going to do here is we're going to teach him a lesson. Go to the bench, right? It worked last week with Mark Andrews. Send him to the bench. He'll realize that he has, dishonored his fantasy team, and then he'll play better. That's just how it goes. Samaje Perine saw 27% of the snaps last week, and Taj Brooks made his debut with 18% of the snaps. Samaje had 4 touches, and Taj had 5 with the offense in the shitter without Joe Burrow, and the rushing attack not even being good with Joe Burrow. This is, you can't start Perine or like a seal or Taj Brooks either. Not starting him. Not doing it. For the Denver Broncos, J.K. Dobbins has 3 straight top 16 finishes as a running back to start off the season with a touchdown in every single game. At this point, he belongs as a clear top 24 running back until further notice. He dominated the snaps with 67% compared to Harvey's 29 last week. With a matchup that allows the second most points to running backs on a per game basis, I feel great about Dobbins as a high-end running back too. RJ Harvey came out the gate of the season looking solid against the Titans, but after that, he has averaged 1.6 yards per carry and 1 yard per carry over the last 2 weeks. Maybe as we get deeper and deeper and deeper into the season, the door opens wider for Harvey to take over. But as of right now, I can't make a good enough argument to start him even in a cupcake matchup up against the Bengals. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying today's video, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Like, it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. Check out one of the videos on our screen if you haven't seen them already. I love you long time. Hope you have a great one. Check out Underdog, link in the video description. Check out the Patreon. The rankings will be on there. I answer all the questions on there for $12.50 a month. I love you so much. Hope you have a great one. As always, good boy.